Okay, hello and welcome to the next in our series of webinars looking at Greece this time. So we're on Discover Greece, presented by Maria Mitzi. So hopefully you are already aware that we at WSP School London have been running a series of webinars throughout lockdown, as we are no longer currently not available to do classroom courses, classroom events. This has been our way of trying to reach out about wine over the last few months. So they've all been free, they've all been recorded. If you want to view any of the recordings, they're available on our website. And yeah, we're excited to bring you another event this evening. I hope you are too. So that's it from me. I will let Maria take over and introduce herself and tell you all about Greece.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you everyone for being with us, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Maria Moutsu. I am a WSET alumna, but also I am a medic. I'm a practicing doctor and a fellow of the earlier Higher Education Academy of UK. Now it's been renamed as HE Advance, which is a professional body that supports and oversees skills in the professional environment and in academia. So I had training with them, and I have been participating in various activities with them, and I have done educational activities within my profession for staff and medical students and trainees. But the wine is another activity. What sort of drew me into wine is quite interesting. And I think it's a nice little chat that I would like to have with you. It's a three-faceted reasoning. One is exploration of taste, because I think we are becoming extremely visual and technical in our modern life, and some senses and some, which is simultaneously ways of thinking, are being a little neglected. So I think it is a fantastic way to sort of explore taste and explore a certain type of thinking that connects with more sort of basic needs. Another reason is exploration of terroirs, which in effect are very well tuned and very well coordinated ecosystems. So very good terroirs, the ones that give very good wines, are actually very well coordinated systems, complicated systems by which the soil, the climate, various microorganisms, plants and animals, insects, yeasts and so on, they work in very good harmony. And this doesn't happen out of the blue. It's a process of many thousands of years of fine-tuning between the different species. So it's interesting to somehow be able to explore these terroirs through an unexpected means, which is wine, as pleasurable as well. But it's very, very interesting to see how such a multitude of elements and factors can have an effect on basically what we eat. Wine is such a fantastic and fanciful product. For Greeks is almost food. So I would, I brought up to consider wine as a food. Not that I was fed with wine in my early age, but wine was on the family table every day. It was never missing. It was an important part. And I think for those communities in which wine has such a central role in the table, this understanding of the wine as a food stretches out to sort of put it in in the environment and see it as a product of a well-coordinated ecosystem. So the second reason was this exploration of ecosystems, and the third reason was basically the use on the table as a fine complement for food, and to enhance obviously the experience of tasting food and having the best possible experience, as well as having a supplement in the diet that can be quite beneficial. Obviously, we are not advocating exaggeration, and some doctors, even Hippocrates and other people in the history of medicine, they have commented along the positive effect that wine can have in the human body. See it as a medicine. You should always follow the rules, and you should always follow the right dose, so you can actually get poisoned through a very good medicine. So just putting a little bit of a limit there. And then here we are. I have enjoyed very much being an alumna and being a pupil in WCT's school. And I would like to share with you things that I have discovered along the way through the WCT, through my own journey of exploring Greek wine in depth, visiting those terroirs and speaking to people, and basically coming to discover some wines that I think they are genuine. So here we are today. There will be a little bit of mythology, a little bit of history. If you see them differently, they are actually merging at one point. There will be a little bit of geography, and then we will focus on the 3 PDO regions that I have chosen today to showcase, like a little journey, a little brief journey throughout Greece, through 3 different regions, PDO regions, and 3 varieties, all PDO varieties. And then we will have a chance to taste wines and chat, which will be an important and very, very interesting part. So we are ready to go. Let me see. So I don't know how many of you have been in Greece. I believe it's a good destination in summer. People generally like to go to Greece, whether they have the chance or not. I don't know how many of you have been in Greece, but basically Greece is a rocky land that lies in the southeast of Europe. Some people think it's a frontier, geographical frontier for Europe. It has definitely been a crossroads of civilizations, cultures, melting pot, and the words Europe and Asia are actually Greek words. Europe means the wide-faced or the wide-eyed, and for ancient Greek aesthetic standards, it meant beautiful. It is the name of a Phoenician princess that was taken by Zeus, him being converted into a bull, and flew over the Aegean. And the first reference of the word Europe appears in Homer, in Iliad, and is considered the western border of the Aegean, interestingly. So it brings the idea of the frontier here. And as you may see, on the left-hand side, we have the map of modern Greece, which is it's a lazy land in the south and east of Europe, quite mountainous. People think of islands, but actually there are lots of high mountains in Greece, the highest being Olympus, the home of gods. So you can see that on the north, it's bordered by Albania, North Macedonia, Bulgaria, and Turkey. And on the east, there is the Aegean Sea and Turkey. On the west, there is the Ionian Sea, which sort of separates Greece from Italy. And in the south, we have the Sea of Crete, the Sea of Crete. So it is basically lumps of mountains and rocks surrounded by sea. It's a windy country and sunny country, of course. There is a multitude of soils. There is a lot of seismic activity in Greece. I don't know if you're aware of that, which explains the big number of islands. So this means also there are streams, undersea streams. So it's a very active place geologically as well. So we said sun, wind, interesting variety of soils, and different micro terroirs, which we will come to. And going back in history, I've got a picture, I've got a map from National Geographic of ancient Greece. That was the era of the colonization. So Greeks being sailors at heart, they have organized expeditions, and they have tried to basically enlarge the area of expand, let's say, their civilization, but basically enlarge the area that they could deal with, exchange cultural elements and have trade with. And you can see there that how much a sailor, sort of a group of people, Greeks are, that they always wanted to stay near the shore. And this actually later on extended on the western part of the Mediterranean, and there have been Greek colonies all along the now French coast and the Iberic Peninsula. Nice, the French city, is named after the Greek word Nike, which means victory, and so on. So this is very important when we think about one of the first wine trades that Greeks undertook. So we'll come back to that. So as we said, there is a variety of terroirs in Greece. There is a variety of land relief. We have mountains, a good number of mountains over 2,000, over or near 2,000 and over. The highest mountain of Greece is Olympus, which is nearly 3,000 meters. So I think it's 2,940, somewhere there. So in the north, the climate is continental and inland. It's pretty continental, and you can see beautiful bridges on the left, artisanal bridges. There are lots of them. There are rivers as well. So mountains, rivers. So snow, mountains, rivers to find for the water, sort of the water volumes to find their way to the sea. Nice bridges. We have these rocky islands spread on both seas, and 3 seas, including the south. The middle picture is of Santorini, just showing one side of the island, pretty naked, and marble. Santorini is very much lava, but there are different, so it's not only lava. So there is definitely some marble there, as it is in all Cyclades. And there are sulfuric, copper, and iron elements in the soil. And on the right, we've got a plain in Emia, which is a valley. So this is a softer sort of landscape there, with vegetation, olive trees, orange and lemon orchards, of course, vines, and low vegetation as well, bushes, lots of herbs in Greece. And the climates, they differ as well from place to place. The nice thing in Greece is, as it is such a bumpy and lazy country, you find clusters of ecosystems, very well sort of tuned ecosystems and self-sufficient. And you find a different climate in all this. So the climate on the coast is Mediterranean. On the islands, and the rockiest and the driest of those islands is Mediterranean, but without water, very little or no water. And then there is continental climate inland, especially from central Greece and going north. And there is a very cold climate up in the mountains and low temperatures. And there are peaks that they are always snow covered in Greece. Believe it or not, people wouldn't believe that, but it's true. Including Olympus, plus some mountain tops in the Pindus range, as well as in Crete. So there is one peak definitely always snow covered in Greece, in Crete. So I call this a quasi-alpine. I hope the environment people are not upset with me by doing that. And there is a fantastic biodiversity in Greece, and that is very important when we talk wine. Again, believe it or not. So lots of little herbs that they can live with very little arid conditions because of these fine-tuned ecosystems, which we have to preserve. So there's lots of thyme, lemon thyme, various herbs, immortelle, you may have heard of it, rosemary, all sorts of things. There are about 6,600 and something unique species in Greece. 6,000, sorry, I'm wrong there, around 6,000, maybe 300, of which the 5,700 and something are indigenous. So any loss there is a loss for the humanity. So it shows how good and how self-sustained this ecosystem is. And then you may have heard of Greek myths. They are very elaborate. They're very intriguing. The core of those myths is basically the order in the world, as I guess in many myths all around the world, with gods and cyclops and titans fighting to sort of establish a good order in the world. You may have heard, I'm sure you know, the 12 Olympian gods, and there was another one, so 12 Olympian gods, 6 female and 6 male, and there was a 13th that was admitted in the Olympus, and that was the god of wine, Dionysus. So he didn't belong to the first 12-some pantheon. And there was even a hero or semigod or demigod that was raised into a divine position and was also admitted, and that was Hercules. But he had to go through a lot of trouble in life. So here we've got Dionysus. Romans called him Bacchus. And what is interesting here, and that sort of inclusion in the major sort of group of gods, it sort of shows, I think, in a very graphic way, how the cultivation of wine came into the Greek territory, possibly from the Aegean Islands and Crete, and became a very important part of the Greek culture. And if we sort of read the myth, Dionysus was born in Asia Minor, and it was actually an imported god. So the cultivation of wine basically came into Greece from the Asia and was incorporated fully with festivals, with worshipping of the god of wine, ascension into the Olympus, and lots of rituals around it. And the Greeks even developed secondary gods that they had to do with drinking wine. So wine, as well as olive oil in Greece, they were not just important products, they were sacred products. And following on that basis, on that mythological and cultural basis, there was development of gatherings in which obviously the preparation of food was detailed, and wine drinking again was slow and detailed, and there were people serving the wine that they had a special role. There were eloquent discussions during that, so you're not allowed really to be drunk because you had to discuss with other people participating. So the mythology says that initially it was Ibi, a goddess, that was serving nectar and ambrosia to the gods on the left, and she was the matron of the sommeliers of the people that they were serving wine in the symposia and the banquets. Later on, after she got married, this was passed to Ganymedes on the right, who was a male, and then he became the official sommelier of the gods. Now, during the symposia, there were definitely rules depending on the preferences of the people that they were participating. Greeks used to dilute, used to have to be very fond of sweet and concentrated wines, and therefore they used to dilute them with different kinds of water, including seawater. So there was a sort of there was a mastery as to how you could dilute it to offer the maximum tasting pleasure, the less of effect in people's ability to discuss and so on. So we think that perhaps that was the founding sort of point for sommeliers and the art of serving wine. And then Greeks were traders, and they were transporting wine everywhere, in the north, in the Black Sea, in the west, on the coasts of Italy, now Italy, France, and Spain, and the north of Africa. And they have, to benefit the most, they have classified the wines depending on the region, depending on the quality. So superior wines would demand higher prices. And here we can see some amphoras, and these were stacked at the bottom of the ships. The amphoras became obsolete after the invention of barrel by the Romans. So they are sort of the main transport means of the ancient world. And obviously, there is a very long history, and there are different phases. There are highs and lows. During all these different episodes of history, Greeks have never ceased to have to include wine into their daily life, being part of the table, of the daily table, and being part of the major cultural events as well. Every celebration includes wine, and wine has been used in Holy Communion as well, together with bread. And vine cultivation has gone uninterrupted for all these centuries and millennia. Even during the Ottoman rule, there were special taxes paid to allow people to continue with their cultivations, including vine cultivations. And monasteries have played a very important role in continuing vine cultivation as well, and winemaking, whereas a big part of the population, being too poor to do that, was not able to. And there has been a lot of domestic wine production. So farmers in Greece, they were not specialist farmers. They would have a bit of wheat, a bit of vine orchard, and households would do their own wines. So that's past, more or less, and we come into the present. So today we have chosen 3 different regions, starting, and 3 different terroirs, very different. So we start from the northwest, where the first dot on the top is the area there. The PTO area is called Zitsa. It's up in the mountains, in the Pindus Mountains. Pindus is a range that comes down from the Alps. And as you can see, this is a physical map of Greece. So you can see that it's quite mountainous. And in fact, the longest range is Pindos Oros. It says there is a range. So it sort of continues really past the strait, past the sea strait, continues onto the Peloponnese, and really, truly continues onto Crete. So there is underwater variation of heights, but it's the same sort of line of mountains that continues all the way, and that's why in Crete we have such tall mountains. So the first stop is Zitza. It's a pedioregion. The variety, pedioregions in Greece, just a small here, a parenthesis, how they were developed. The modern pedioregions were developed in the early 70s. And they were developed basically on the basis of wine variety. Some pedioregions were developed on the basis of wine style, but mostly grape variety. And there are 33 of them, 33 pedioregions for Greece. So Zitza is the northwest most, furthest. It's a pretty small pedioregion, one of the smallest, if not the smallest, with about 2,000 hectares, just a little bit over 2,000 hectares. Only 3 wineries, 3 professional wineries there, really, really tiny. The grape variety, the pedio grape variety, is a white variety, Debina. The word Debina possibly comes from Latin, from the words devino, which again emphasizes this sort of cultural exchange that the Greek land has been subject to, has been theater of. The second stop will be Nemea, the largest pedioregion of Greece. So Nemea is the blue spot on the Peloponnese. Peloponnese is the Hunt-like peninsula in the south mainland Greece. And Nemea is on the north part of the peninsula, north and east. It's a valley. It's a valley that contains about 44 to 45 wineries. The main grape variety and the pedio grape variety there is Agiorgitiko, the most cultivated red grape of Greece, red grape, and known since ancient times. Actually, they were there in the ancient times, temples of Ibi. I said that Ibi was the server of ambrosia and nectar to the gods. So they used to worship Ibi there. The ancient name was Phliousa, and this is where Hercules has performed his first task, the killing of the Nemean lion. The locals call red wine the blood of Hercules. That's our second stop. And the third stop is Santorini, very celebrated, very sort of very desired touristic destination. Is a unique place. It's unique in many ways historically. It signals the end of the Minoan civilization. You may have heard that there has been, there is actually a volcano in Santorini. There is an active volcano in Santorini. Santorini nowadays is formed of 4 islands, one of which is larger, is the main island, is what we call Santorini, but there are 3 smaller islands around it, and they all form sort of a circle, in the middle of which is the volcano. The volcano erupted, had a huge eruption in around 1600 BC, which created a big earthquake. This has been sort of felt across the Aegean, including Crete, and has basically brought to soil buildings, created tides, tsunamis that has reached the north coast. And even people believe that it was such a major event for the sort of the geological order of the planet, that it has even, on that year, there has been no summer in China, sort of changed the succession of seasons. and that was a major issue so far away that has caused a change in the dynasties in China. So that volcano eruption has created this big sort of crater in the middle of the sea, and this has caused this beautiful sort of cliff, black cliff that we all know. We have seen in pictures of Santorini, 300 meter and over of a black cliff, on the top of which very picturesque houses lying with beautiful views of the sunset. So that's the volcano there, which makes basically the soil very mineral, rocky, arid, plus there are other elements there, climatic elements, as we will see, strong winds that sort of define the terror of Santorini. So these are the three we are going to now see, and we are moving on to the first one, up in the north west, 650 to 700 meters of altitude. We have the vineyards of Debina. There is a little bit of red wine there and red grape varieties, but the majority is white, and it's planted with Debina. So Debina is on the left. Is relatively resistant. It's a wet sort of climate there. The winters start early. They start more or less at the end of August, and harvest happens at the beginning of August. So it's in terms of flavor, it's a delicate variety. I think it's a good time, if you have the wines, to give a go to see how you find them. It's a delicate variety, but what is interesting in this wine, there is a sort of a backbone, a mineral backbone. So I've got the wine next to me, and for those who have it there, it's a light sparkling wine, so it's not a fully sparkling wine, which means that the pressure in the bottle it's under 3 atmospheres. So you may call it frizzante. So it's a light sparkling wine. It's been produced in the Charmat method, which means that fermentation takes place in a big vat, stainless steel vat. It is a traditional style. So in the older days, the fermentation was happening in the barrels, and it was happening spontaneously. So people would make wine in the usual way, press the grapes, put them in the barrel. They would start fermenting on their own. They would close the barrels, and the fermentation would stop as the temperature would go down, as the winter was starting. So the wine stayed there over the winter, half fermented, and then in the spring a second fermentation would start. And if the vessel was sealed, was well closed, then the carbon dioxide of the second fermentation would stay in and create a light sparkling wine. And that was a traditional style in that region, believe it or not. So it's not only Champagne that has the privilege of having traditionally sparkling wines. So in those old days, people would use different types of grapes, mostly the white grape of the region, but some red as well. But the final wine would be sparkling, would be light sparkling, as it is now, the Debina. It's pretty interesting. It is light lemon in color with fine bubbles. This one is off dry, so there is a little bit of sweetness, and the beauty of and low alcohol. So we are in a cool climate there. So alcohol is 11.8 degrees. And the beauty, in my opinion, of this wine, and I would chat with you afterwards, I would like to take your opinions of this, is a good balance between the different elements. So we have a little bit of sweetness, and we have a little bit of residual sugar. We have high acidity because we're in a cool climate. We have delicate flavors of the grape, but a mineral backbone, which has to do with the soil. It's a limey soil, possibly with fossilic deposits at deeper levels. And it has this unmistakable mineral backbone, this wine. And I think all these elements, the sort of citrus flavors, delicate sort of aromatic profile, together with sweetness, together with acidity, together with a minerality, I think they create a very pleasant sort of composition. So it's sort of, I think it's very kind to the palate, this wine. And this is from a winery, more or less historic winery in the region called Domaine Glinavos. It's been founded by Lefteris Glinavos on the right, the eldest of the two. On the left is Thomas, his son. Lefteris Glinavos was one of the was the first winemaker, Greek winemaker, that received education outside Greece in Bordeaux in the 70s. Modern winemaking in Greece started towards the end of the 50s, beginning of 60s, and started in Santorini, as it was such a touristic place, and that was the renaissance of Greek wine. But people basically improved the way of making wine, try to industrialize, try to sort of increase their volumes, but training was very much traditional, as tradition dictated. So passing basically of information from generation to generation. And it was then in the 70s and later, even more in the 80s, that people decided to visit well-known winemaking areas to sort of understand better how winemaking can be good and create really nice wines. So the winery was formed, was founded after 1975, and they had their first bottling in 1978, which was the rosé sort of counterpart of the Debina we are tasting today. It's again a light sparkling rosé wine made predominantly by the Debina variety, 97%, with a little bit of the red local variety Beccari, which makes it very much interesting because the red variety, I explained different elements before: acidity, sweetness, minerality, flavors. Now we have even a red grape there that adds a little bit of tannins. And the rosé light sparkling is really, really interesting. Again, a very nice sort of dialogue between different tasting elements. So I think it's a very good wine, especially if it's your first wine. So being a winery and making this as a first wine, I think it's a fantastic feat. And they named the wine by a local heroine, a real character, Lady Frosine. So nowadays, the winery obviously has developed, has obtained a very modern facilities, modern image, has a number of different wines, has a few sparkling Debina labels, Method Champenoise, two of them, a Brut and a semi-sweet. They make dry Debina as well, which also has a BDO status. And they also use international grape varieties in some bottlings. So it's worth visiting. A very different, perhaps, a side of Greece and Greek winemaking from perhaps the islands or Nemea or Naousa that you have heard of. So that's the wine we have in today's tasting. 100% indigenous Debina grapes, and the yeasts are also indigenous. Charmat method, and the fermentation is long. So they sort of try to imitate that traditional winemaking where when the wine used to stay in the vessel, not fully fermented for the whole winter. So they harvest in August, and then they put in the tanks. The wine stays fermented, and there's a second fermentation that goes all the way to June when they bottle. And our second stop, we will, because of having 2 white wines, we will have to go to Santorini and then go back to Nemea. We're not going to follow the sort of the geographic route. So we are going to make a stop in Santorini. Grape variety there predominantly Assyrtiko, 70% of the cultivation in Santorini. As we said, Santorini is sort of cut on one side, on the western side, because of the volcano eruption. And this is what you can see on the picture on the left. You see this sort of sharp cliff. This is what the volcano has created. And you can see the striations of different soils and rocks. You can see that, you know, there are some white parts, and further in the horizon, you've got more black parts. Some areas are softer with sort of pumice, sort of soft stone. Other are heavier, proper lava with sort of metal content. The interesting thing, if you go to Santorini, where wine is an important product of the island, and I think it's a surprise. People, myself, I tried to sort of went there and I looked for the vineyards, and I thought that's not the right way of looking, because I couldn't see any. You actually have to look down on the ground. So they don't allow the vines to train high up, so that they are protected from the winds. And they sort of they start to spread on the soil. And when the vine grows, in order to keep its sort of core, its tree sort of trunk, they make a wreath around it. They make a basket. They allow it to sort of go around itself and weave the branches through the main sort of ring circle, and in that way they keep the whole sort of vine together. Sometimes, if there are strong winds, if the vines are on the higher parts of the island, they may dig around that sort of wreath, that basket, to allow it to stay very much at soil level, so it doesn't rise. Very humble sort of composition. So it's even under or just on level on earth, on ground level. So, and when you see it down below, how it is at the beginning of the spring. This one is quite old, actually, the one at the forefront, but it's a good way to show how the trunk sort of manages to keep everything, all the branches together. And then when the spring comes, the leaves sort of allow the plant, the vine, to re-leaf, and they start the process of another cycle of life, of budding and fruit bearing. But it looks like that. So the winery I've got the Santorini wine from is a local winery, the same as the first one. So all these wineries that I'm presenting today are local people. They you know, they're, which is nice, as nice as it is obviously to have visiting winemakers, but this is the case now for these ones. So they are locals, and they have been winemaking for 3 generations. They used to be one of the main Vinsando producers back in the 60s, and Vinsando was very celebrated, and it was the main wine for exportation in those days. So I have the new generation here, the brother and sister of the winery. I don't have the main winemaker because I couldn't find the picture. So these are my pictures, but I haven't yet properly sort of filed them. So I found, and I'm sure he's very happy that I'm having the young generation here. So Vangelis and Dimitra, and the vineyards are in the southern part of the island, which is the most lava holding. So the wines from the southern part of the island are definitely more bold and mineral. They work with local varieties other than Assyrtiko. That's another interesting thing. And they do very good Vinsanto. So they follow that tradition of decades, and they do a very good Vinsanto, very concentrated, very thick, very flavorsome, and yet very low in alcohol. And they have these old barrels. You see on the right of the picture, the lower barrels are the barrels of Assyrtiko, and they don't need to be new. They are very old, these barrels. They are 70, 80 years old. They just need to hold basically the liquid, the wine, and just allow air basically to slowly transform the wine. Whereas the top barrels you see on the top rack, they are new barrels, and these are for maturation of their red wines. And they need the flavor, so they have to go for a new barrel. And I have selected a wine called Nykteri. It's a wine style in Santorini. It's one of the best wine styles in Santorini, and very celebrated. Nykteri, the name means of the night. So the word night comes from nix or nikta, the Greek word, and means basically what it does. What it is showing here is that these grapes are being harvested at nighttime or very early hours of the morning. They are very ripe grapes. So to make a wine like this, which is meant to be one of the best, you choose a very good plot, and you allow the grapes to well ripe, and then you harvest, or they harvest in the early hours to allow freshness. So it's a hot place, especially in the summer. With a sort of night harvest, they get the fruit at the lowest possible temperatures. The fruit is overripe or well ripe, so you expect a high alcoholic degree, a very sort of full flavor. And then to enhance the flavor, they mature the wine in barrels for at least 3 months. So any wine that is named Nykteri, and many of the producers on the island, they want to have this sort of signature and prestigious label. They go for, as we said, a good plot, ripe grapes, night harvest, and at least 3 months of barrel aging. Of course, this depends on the style. This one that we are having today is been aged in barrel for 6 months, and others may choose to actually age for more. So really, it's a winemaker's preference, and sort of defines the style as well. So this is a complex wine, very bold. Now, the one I have here is 13.5 degrees, but it can vary. It can vary between 14.5, from 13.5 to 14.5. So 14 is a quite unexpected sort of strength, alcoholic strength, for this type of wine. And as I said, it is multi-layered. So, and always with a minerality that the Santorini would create because of the volcanic soil and arid conditions. Then we have Nemea and a Georgitiko. I will come back and ask you. I want to go quickly on this at this stage, because I want to make sure we are okay with time. But once I sort of go through the Nemean wine, then I will chat with you. So in Nemea, as we said, we are back in the Peloponnese, in the mainland, on the southern part. In Nemea, we have a few different, again, sub-terroirs, because as we said, it is a valley and expands on the sides of a river. So we have different altitudes, different levels, and different soil compositions. So the picture on the left is from ancient Nemea, and you can see there Zeus temple. This is very nearby the winery of which the wine we are tasting today. And a Georgitiko grape looks very much like a Mediterranean red grape. So it's resistant with pretty thick skins, composed together. The sort of grains are composed. It's a wine, it's a grape that can give wines of good alcohol, good amount of tannins, and a lot of basically red fruit, some plum as well, and cherry. So it's a very much a Mediterranean grape. And here is the personnel of the winery I'm showing to you. Again, it's a well-known, iconic winery. The founder on the left, he left us last summer. I think at the age of 92 or 93. His son on the right, George, and in the background, not clearly seen, his grandson. So it's a sort of a row of winemakers, and the barrel stacked on the lower picture. So winemaker Thanasis Papaioannou left the School of Economics, the Athens University, because of Second World War, and had his university studies interrupted. He came back to home. He came back home, and he took over the vineyards, the estate, and he managed through his life to convert the estate to an organic estate before organic cultivation was a trend 30 years ago, to make it self-sustained. So they only use grapes of their own, and he was one of the first that bottled wine. As we said, wine was a commodity and was produced and circulated in different vessels without necessarily being bottled in Greece. So, and most importantly, I forgot something very important here. He was the one that took Assyrtiko out of Santorini. So lots of achievements there. Saw the potential of Assyrtiko and took Assyrtiko out of Santorini and planted Nemea, which is a predominantly red wine producing region with Assyrtiko. And now Assyrtiko is cultivated everywhere in Greece. It's such a behaving grape and producing really amazing wines and terroir-driven wines. So that's him. And the wine we are tasting is their estate Nemea, 100% Agioργyriko from the region, organically cultivated, and also organic at bottling, good fruit selection, measured extraction, so it's not an over-the-top style. You will see the color is not very, very deep color, garnet, predominantly ruby, and some garnet as well. And the wine is matured in both French and American oak for 12 months. So the idea there is to produce a sort of a broader style and very pleasant with different elements from the wood. I think the beauty of this wine is that it's nicely measured. So all the elements, the flavor elements, they coexist nicely with without sort of overshadowing one another. So it's a nice, I think, a nice example of what balance can be in a wine. So it's balanced, sheer, and satisfying. And I think, as we said, there are about 45 wineries in the region. I think, you know, if you want to do a tasting of Nemean wines, I think for historic reasons, but also for its tasting qualities, I think you wouldn't do bad to include this as well. So the photos in the presentation were mine, and some were also from the wineries, from Domaine Glinavos, and I have tried to credit sort of pictures of statues in the mythology part, wherever I took them from the web. And the maps were also sourced, web sourced, and available for free use. And I thank you to the WSET School for giving me this opportunity. The Greek winemakers for doing their best and exceeding and constantly elevating the standard of Greek wine. Kudos Wines is an online platform, and they have offered this tasting pack at a very good value price. And everyone who enjoys wine, and hopefully, Greek wine will get a permanent place in the heart of the wine lovers. And here is some connection channels for WSET, which are doing a great job. Education is a very, very, a very sensitive and community sort of serving. So you sort of create a community and you transfer knowledge, which is fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria, for that. That was really fascinating. I don't know if you were able to keep an eye on the chat as you were going through, but so many people clearly so interested in what you were saying. I think a few people might be looking to get hold of some of those wines afterwards, though your description of them has made them sound very enticing. So yeah, just a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for your time. I think what we'll do is end the recording here.